All right, welcome back to part two of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. X and KB coming at you as we always do. Appreciate everybody joining in, whether you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on your podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. Well, when Trae Young was traded to the Washington Wizards, it seemed that it was the dawn of a new day in DC, even though we didn't know exactly how it was going to play out, KB. But now, and I think we talked about this a little bit on here, we're about to really go in depth on this now. The Washington Wizards have the number one overall pick for this year's NBA draft. And that gives them some unique things. You can either choose to go all in with this number one pick, or you can choose to build around Trae Young. If that number one pick is AJ DeBonsa, I don't see how him and Trae Young actually end up gelling well. Maybe that's just me, but I just don't see it that way. But then there was news that broke on Wednesday night that Trae Young is opting out of his contract with the Washington Wizards and that he is going to become a free agent. Now, all expectations in the early reports indicate that he is expected to sign a long-term deal with the Washington Wizards, a new contract. So Wizards fans shouldn't necessarily be in a panic if they want to continue to see Trae Young in a Wizards jersey. But I think there's another wrinkle here, and I think it makes things interesting. There is a certain top five, top six player in the league who we've been hearing about certain possible movements from this team to that team. Is he going to go here? Is he going to go there? For months now. I'm talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I saw a report a few days ago that said that Giannis is trying to get moved to the Miami Heat. And my thoughts are this. If Giannis does end up moving to the Miami Heat, there's no way I think he goes there alone. Him and Bam just being there is not enough to put them into a championship conversation. There's no way I think he would go there alone, and they wouldn't necessarily be able to make another trade to get another superstar there with him. So here comes free agency, right? There's not a lot of marquee free agents necessarily out there. But what's one pairing that people have talked about as a possibility for years? Fans in Atlanta fantasized about this a couple of years ago. That would be Giannis and Trae Young. Now, I'm not saying Giannis, Trae Young, and Bam would be a championship nucleus if that was to end up being the case in Miami. But the only place I see Giannis going where he would end up going alone because there's already an established superstar there would be Boston because of Jason Tatum. I think there could be something more to this. Now, I could be wrong, and he could end up signing a whole new deal with Washington, and then that's the end of this. But I honestly think it's something to watch.
I think it's something to watch as well. And another wrinkle that we haven't even talked about, it is something to be said about the fact that Darren Peterson only worked out for Washington Wizards. So there could be a situation where Trae enters free agency and he decides that he wants to go somewhere else. I feel like Washington still has the lead on re-signing him, but I do think that there's a good chance that he could end up going somewhere else. He could, because I feel like at this moment he's still looking for that max money that he wasn't getting from the Hawks. So he still sees himself as a max level player. Now, you brought up an interesting point about Giannis Antetokounmpo, because I also had a report come out that I saw a while back that said that the Miami Heat could pivot to Trae Young if they don't get the player, if they swing and miss on the players that they want. Now, I think that if Trae Young is your max deal signing and him alone, that's not good enough. But if you're able to make a play where you keep Bam out of bio and then you make a trade for Trae Young, and then not make a trade for Trae Young, but sign Trae Young, make that trade for Giannis. I feel like if there's gonna be a move involving Giannis, it may not just be just the Miami Heat involved. It may be a third team involved in that scenario. I think that right now, just to make the money work and what they're asking, because I think that right now, if I'm not mistaken, the Bucks, they want some quality starting players as well as the picks. I think that they want a little even mix of both because they're losing their franchise guy. But I think that Giannis is, if the iron was ever hot, it's hotter than ever right now. And I think that with Trae Young, he falls into that little weird area. It's a gray area if I had to say, because of the fact that who's willing to give him that max level money at this point? Because a lot of people, the same people that are saying, oh, he's not a max level player, he's still going to get interest from a lot of teams. Whether it's not for, it doesn't necessarily have to be max money, but he's going to get a significant, he's going to get significant offers from a number of teams, and some of them are going to be contending teams because it's a couple of teams that could use a great playmaker and a great scoring guard like Trae Young.
And if people haven't been paying attention, this free agency class that's coming up isn't exactly stacked.
Exactly. So he is going to be, regardless of what you believe in, he's going to be one of the marquee free agents out there. If not one, he's going to be towards the top, if anything. So, of course, more people are concerned about what's going to happen with Giannis, what's going to happen with Jalen Brown. I know their names have been flirted around in trade talks recently. I think that, a report just came out about the fact that when it came about Giannis even possibly being moved to Boston, we talked about. I know you said as long as Giannis don't go to Boston, you're cool. And I think that trade would fall apart as far as Jalen Brown has no real desire to play in Milwaukee, so there would have to be another team involved. So I think that you know that's going to be one of those things that when we're talking about what Giannis does, it's going to be a lot of different factors that play a part in that because I do think he could go to Boston.
I'm gonna throw you another team in there that nobody's talking about at all, who honestly could end up sneaking into this thing, and that would be the Los Angeles Clippers, because they have the number 5 overall pick. They have some interesting young players that they could also send to Milwaukee. Trae Young has hinted before in the past of an interest of wanting to play in Los Angeles. Now, maybe that solely might have meant wanting to play for the Lakers or not. But I remember when he put on the Dodgers hat. And I remember when he hinted at that. I would not rule out, with the money that Steve Ballmer can roll out, a possibility of them trading for Giannis, and then a possibility of Trae Young coming over. Again, it's not that I don't want Giannis to go to Boston. At this point, I could care less where he goes. I'm just ready for this to end up being over. But I just know that there are certain places where he'll go that he will not go alone, because this is supposed to be about winning, and this is supposed to be about adding more championships to your legacy. A nucleus of just Giannis and Bam in Miami is not doing that.
But would a nucleus of Giannis and Jason Tatum do that for you?
That part I don't know, because I'm starting to have questions about Jason Tatum's durability going forward. I don't know what to expect in that department going forward, and Giannis too, for that matter. I mean, he's had injury issues over the past few years, not nearly as severe as Jason Tatum's have been with the torn Achilles that he suffered last year in the playoffs, but he's missed some time on the court over the past few years too.
That's very true. I think that it is going to be one of those things that it's going to be. It may you may see even up leading. You're going to see some draft day trades because I feel like that this class is so stacked that you're going to see teams that are going to mortgage. Like I've seen even reports with the Hawks from the local reports that saying that they have interest in getting into the top 5, and they may package that number 8 and 23rd pick just to move into the top 5, as well as possibly attaching another player, and that could include Zachary Richardson. So it is one of those things that people are going to be there. GMs are on the phone as we speak because right now, Giannis has shown interest in playing elsewhere. Jalen Brown, while necessarily he hasn't come out and say that he doesn't want to be in Boston, the idea.
Oh no, he's come out and he said the exact opposite of that. But sometimes people say things just to make it sound good.
You are right. That is true because we've seen people. I mean, Paul George. We seen what he did one year with OKC. We said he wanted to resign there and completely pivoted away. So, like, sometimes it does just sound good. And well, we don't know like exactly how this is going to go, but there is going to be a lot to watch out for, especially leading up to the draft and actually even during the draft of who can get moved because we've heard some players are almost as good as gone, and then we've seen some people saying they just garner interest. I think that Giannis, you don't know exactly what player because of the injuries that he's had. people are still cautious about giving up so much to get a guy on the, who's been injury riddled for the past couple of seasons. But I still got to remind people at the end of the day, at his peak, Giannis is a top 5 player. And he could even go as top 3.
Does it surprise you though that we haven't heard a little bit more out of the nation's capital in terms of them wanting to package that number 1 pick and some more stuff up and send that to Milwaukee to try to get Giannis? And I ask that because when they traded for Trae Young, it was all about trying to build around Trae and then potentially AD. I don't see AD in DC going forward, quite honestly. But that's what it was all about. But then they get the number 1 overall pick, and it's like the focus is kind of changed here. Like, do we build around Trae? Do we build around the pick? Do we try to build around 2 things? I don't think they can build around those 2 things, to be honest with you, because to me, they're on 2 different timelines. Trae Young is in a win now timeline. You get the number 1 overall pick. That's not a win now timeline.
Yeah, and then honestly, let's say Trae Young doesn't resign. It's not like you gave up that much in the long run. You didn't give up that much because you lose Trae for nothing. Okay, that money is now off the books. You don't pick up. He didn't pick he didn't pick up his option. But let's say you did like just lose Trae Young for nothing, right? All you gave up was CJ McCollum and Kory Kispert. You didn't lose much in the end. You still have the number 1 overall pick, which is the most appealing thing in this entire microscope right now, because everything that you're doing, people are paying attention to. If you bring, like you said, they are on 2 different timelines because Trae wants to win now. He wants to get to an NBA Finals because, like, at that point, he saw where the direction that the writing was on the wall in Atlanta. He saw the direction they were willing to go in. I think that when it comes down to it, you have to decide what direction are you going as far as your team, because you can't be trying to pay max money for Trae, build a contending team as well with the number 1 pick, still have AD in the fold, and then you have all these younger guys that still have to develop. Because I feel like if you got the number 1 overall pick and you're going to hand the reins over to AJ DeMonsa, just hand it over to AJ DeMonsa and then let the rest of those young guys develop around him, and then you can kind of see where you kind of are at the end of the season. I think that's exactly what you should do.
If this is the route they end up going in terms of keeping Trae, selecting AJ number 1 overall, or Darren Peterson for that matter, keeping Anthony Davis and having those young players, and let's say everybody remains healthy, that's a playoff team next season in the Eastern Conference more than likely, but it's not a championship team. Young players do not just come in and just automatically slide into a championship nucleus unless your name is Magic Johnson.
Yeah, and I think that the way that they have to think about this is like, because if you decide that you're going to give Trae that money, right? If you're going to give Trae that money, whose team is it? Whose team it really is it? Are you really handing the reins over to AJ if you decide to select AJ, or are you handing it over to Trae because of the money that you just gave him, which makes him the guy on the team? It makes him the guy. No matter who's the number 1 overall pick, if you pay Trae max money, he's the guy.
That's why I have no problem with the moves that I've seen the Dallas Mavericks make over the past couple of months, because they're at least making 1 point known in all of this. This is Cooper Flagg's team, and this is going to be Cooper Flagg's team.
Yeah, I think it has to be like undisputed. This is the guy. This is the guy. I don't think it can be this is the guy, but this will be the guy in a few years. I think it has to be clear cut. Trae, either this is your team or we're going to hand the reins over to the number 1 overall pick. But I don't think that it can be both. I think that that's why pretty much when it was in Atlanta, it was like, okay, this is going to be the guy in Jalen Johnson. But then we still got Trae Young. Now, it has to be clear, like, because too many things we've seen get muddied up in the waters as far as like when it becomes like, oh, this guy has to take a back seat. No, I don't think that it has to be the case, because AJ at the number 1 overall pick, because of the way I feel like his game is, I think that he needs the green light. And I think that it's going to be good for his development to have that green light coming out the gate because of the fact that he's on a young team. Now, the timeline gets a little muddied up when you're talking about, because you have an older AD who's been injury riddled. You have guys like, you moved off of guys like Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, because they were older and they didn't necessarily fit the timeline. Now, while Trae's not an old player by trade, he's not necessarily a young guy because he's been hurt
No, he's
over the
going into
past
year
couple.
9.
Yeah, he's been now, and he's been hurt the last couple of seasons. So you look at it like that. What are you trying to be? Are you trying to completely rebuild and start over where you could be, you could be a low end playoff team, you know what I'm saying, if you keep Trae Young, but you could just rebuild it and then say, we're going to look for the future, towards the future instead of that.
My ultimate synopsis on this whole thing is I think the Wizards are confused about what direction they want to go in with this. Them getting the number 1 overall pick, I think it created some slippery waters for them on this, because when you traded for Trae Young back in January, even if he's not going to play very much this season, okay, we know that he's going to be the guy going forward. Then, we end up getting the number 1 overall pick and one of the most loaded drafts in the NBA in a very long time. And I just feel like if they knew they were going to go forward with Trae, we would have been hearing more information coming out about how, the Wizards are willing to entertain this for the number 1 overall pick. I feel like they would be trying to get another star, or dare I say, even one of the few superstars that we have in this league, to try to pair with Trae if they're going to try to move this thing forward with him. It's very interesting to see where they go with this.
And I also think, for the sake is, I think that what Trae is also doing, he's gauging his value as well, because it is about winning. But we also saw when it came down to Atlanta, he wanted to get paid. He felt like that he was supposed to be getting paid. He felt like that extension, it was something that he was due and he was owed. And so when front office of the Atlanta Hawks didn't give it to him, his value was seen, like when he was flirted around in trade talks, we saw that his value didn't have as high as value as he would have had maybe in 2021, 2022 season. So right now, I think he's gauging his value because somebody is willing to play ball. You got to think about what we talked about before. Desperate teams do a lot of things. Now, and then he might say, well, I'm not, as much as I want to win, I want to get paid as well. We've seen guys take the money. We've seen guys verbally say, I want to win, but then take the money and do the complete opposite. Could he do the same? Absolutely. So I think that it's one of those things where even if the Wizards are the front runners to re-sign him, he is trying to see what is teams willing to give him to be a part of the franchise, and are they willing to hand over the reins to him? Because I think that he wants to be the guy. I think that is Trae by nature. He has never stepped onto an NBA court and not been the guy on any team that he's been on. So I think that is one of those things that, because he only has, his play style demands to be the 1A, 1B, but no lower than 1B. So I think that that's him at his core.
And do you want to bring in a guy like AJ DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, or one of these top profile picks to have to play alongside that could potentially hurt their development as NBA players?
I think if they bring in Darren Peterson, there's no way that Trae resigns, because I think that is the thing that would hinder Darren Peterson playing with another true point guard, a guy who has the ball, who has been, as far as usage rates, Trae is pretty much since he's been in the league, has been at the top of the league as far as the usage rates because of the way that he has the ball in his hands. I think that would hinder his development even more than AJ's development, because of the fact that Darren Peterson is going to need the ball in his hands to develop. He's going to need to develop into a real point guard, because he was more of a scoring guard at Kansas. He's going to need that ball in his hands more if he's going to develop the way that, if the Wizards select him over AJ. So that's something to be seen too.
Well, one thing that we do know is that the team that has the number 4 pick is the Chicago Bulls, and they have a new head coach, officially hiring Tiago Splitter earlier this week. I love the move. I don't know what's going on in Portland. I honestly could care less, but I love this move for the Chicago Bulls. I feel like it's a good culture move for a team that's trying to start over.
Man, when I saw this, the first thing that I thought of, I was like, what is Portland doing? You had him in-house and you let him go. Because I guarantee if he was offered the position in Portland, he would have stayed in Portland. I think that he built a rapport with those guys. I think that, they over exceeded expectations given the fact of what went on with Chauncey Billups situation, I was looking at Chicago like, good for them, because I thought Tiago Splitter he needed to be a head coach. I think that what he did in that 1 year of Portland, where he had to take over, given the crazy scenario that happened with Chauncey Billups, I thought that he deserved it at least. So the fact that he got a opportunity with the Chicago Bulls, this could very well bite Portland into what, just because of the fact that you had him and you let him go. I think that was a crazy move by them, but I think it was a great move by Chicago.
If I had to pick a current team on either conference right now that made the playoffs this past season who might not make it next season, Portland's number one on that list for me. And I understand that Damian Lillard's coming back next year, but I don't really know what we're going to see from him for 82 games. But because the ownership just appears to be too cheap and they're getting in the way of this team really taking the true next steps forward, I don't know that I can trust them.
Yeah, it would be them and Phoenix for me, because I don't know what's going on over there either. I don't foresee either one of them. If we had to pick teams that just made the playoffs, and we're talking about the teams that barely got in, yeah, those two would be at the top of the list for me.
And that's a shame when it comes to Portland, because we really saw a team that really took some big strides this season with Denny Avdia and Scoot Henderson and that nucleus that they're building over there. But you got to have the right guy leading the charge. And I felt like they had the right guy in Tiago Splitter. I just don't know what they're doing over there. But hey, once again, I love this for Chicago. And he's got a chance to start over with a team that knows they have to start from scratch. One quick note I also want to make about Chicago, because since we've done a show, something terrible happened within the Bulls organization, and that was the sudden passing of Stacey King. Just want to say rest in peace to him. That's a huge loss. Champion with the Bulls multiple times, over a great college player at the University of Oklahoma, a guy that you honestly can say, KB, was the face of that franchise for the past few years because of the struggles that they've had out there on the court.
Yeah. Honestly, I remember when I seen the news and I saw the tributes and posts coming in for Stacey King. So I will say, condolences to his family and friends and anybody else that was affected by him. I know he was a big voice in the Chicago Bulls organization. So I will say, like, he'll be missed. And, like I said, condolences to his family, more importantly than anything.
When it comes down to his beloved Chicago Bulls, man, I'm really fascinated in the direction that they could take going forward as a franchise next year with a team that's going to be full of a bunch of young guys out there. Do you think that Josh Giddey is going to be a long-term part of this team's plan, or is he eventually going to get moved again?
I would think he would be, because I like the fact of, since he's been there, he's been one of the best players on the Bulls team, because like I say, he's a constant triple double watch threat every single night that he's on the court. I think that go ahead, Hicks.
So I agree with you on that, but here's the thing. Do we know for a fact that he's a true winning player? I know that he was a part of a couple of winning teams, or at least one winning team in Oklahoma City when they were the 1 seed 2 seasons ago. But do we give most of that credit to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the emerging Jalen Williams? Or do we say that Josh Giddey was a big part of that?
I think he played a role in it. But I think what comes down to it for the Chicago Bulls, they gotta nail this draft pick. And it has to be the right draft pick, because we've seen them completely miss on a draft pick before with Patrick Williams. I think that they have to nail this draft pick, because while I think that the success of their team is going to fall into, can they attract key free agents and can they draft well? We know that they have development like Montez Buzelis. I think that he's going to be a great player going forward. I think that he has some good skill. I think that when you talk about Josh Giddey has skills. And I think that he just needed more opportunity because of that backcourt getting so crowded with Shai Gilgeous and then Jalen Williams developing the player that he became. I think that it was always good for him to be able to be on his own team where he could showcase his skills. Because I do think that since he's been in Chicago, he's shown a different Josh Giddey. I think that he was a great player in OKC, but I think that he has now more opportunity and he's being able to, learn and make the mistakes on his own without the, threat of being pulled and, completely taken out of rotation. Now he's taking over for a team where he's one of the older of the youngest guys. He's going to be one of those vets that people are going to call on in those late moments, and I think that you can utilize him late game situations. And like I said, he gets his teammates involved. That's why I say I think he is a winning player. But I think that as far as what they have to put around him is going to come down to, can they get those free agents to sign, and can they draft well? Because I know that they've been linked to even guys like Caleb Wilson, who I think is going to be a good player. And I think that would be the right pick for them.
You brought it up, so that's exactly where I was going to go with it. I think that Caleb Wilson is going to be the pick for Chicago.
And I think that that pick makes all the sense in the world for them, because you look at a guy who's about 6'9", 6'10", who can handle the ball, who can play make, who can shot block, who can rim run. He can pretty much do everything that you need him to do. And I think playing with a guy like Josh Giddey will help get him to an even better level than he's already at, because Josh Giddey, while he at his core, he's a true playmaker. He can pass the ball. So I think that Caleb Wilson, the pick, makes too much sense to me for you not to go to that direction.
Well, sticking with the NBA, but transitioning back to the New York Knicks. A lot of celebrations, a lot of congratulations the past couple of days, but I'm already sensing that there's some folks out there that believes that this might be a bit of fool's gold, because the MVP rankings for next season and the preseason odds have already came out, and Jalen Brunson is currently ranked 9th. The championship odds for next season, preseason odds, before the draft, for free agency, all of that stuff, it's already come out. The New York Knicks are ranked 4th. Now, it should be noted that since these two things have happened, James Dolan recently came out and said that he's willing to spend whatever check it is that he has to spend to keep this team together and to add more pieces to it, but he will not spend to the point that they're going to be in the second apron again. So that's going to be something to watch. When I hear that, here's what that means to me. Landry Fields will be somewhere else next season. Mitchell Robinson will be somewhere else next season, and possibly Jordan Clarkson too. Do you feel like the Knicks are getting disrespected though? Especially Mr. Brunson.
I think Brunson may be getting disrespected. I don't think the Knicks overall, and the reason why I feel like his odds for the MVP are so low is because he's on a very stacked team as far as cohesiveness, and he isn't asked to do as much as some of these other guys. So when you look at him versus a Jokic is asked to do everything. Brunson, while he is the captain, he's the closer, he's the leader, he's all of that. But when he doesn't have it, we've seen guys being able to pick up the slack on his side of it. Because like I said, when you compare it to a Shea, like Brunson, when you compare it to Shea, and I'm not even talking about when I say Shea, I'm not talking about with a healthy J-Dub. I'm talking about without J-Dub. So we're just talking about this past season. You take Shea, if Shea is not on his game that night, OKC is more than likely not being that competitive, because we've seen Chet have games where he goes and he disappears. We've seen that. We've seen it where they can't get contributions from guys like if you're getting most of your points from Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, AJ Mitchell, that's nice. I don't think you're going to win a lot of games, but that's nice, I guess. But if Shea is off for the majority of an 82-game season, you don't win much. But if Jalen Brunson doesn't have a great game, you still have OG, you still have Josh Hart, you still have Cat, you still have Mitchell Robinson, you still have guys that still are, that still can contribute. He's just the engine of the team. He is the engine. He gets it going. So I'm not going to say that, but it's guys that have to do a lot more because they're called and asked to do a lot more. It's no disrespect to Jalen Brunson. I just think that he has such a great team that they kind of disrespect him in that sense because of the fact that, we've seen it where he hasn't had great shooting nights and they've still gone on to win those games. He's still the closer, though.
You mentioned all those guys that the Knicks have, but I'm going to flip this back at you. If Jalen Brunson has an off night, and I know we saw him have off shooting nights during the finals, but if he has an off night where he's having an off shooting night and he's not able to get to the free throw line very much, I don't think that's the same Knicks team, no matter how many of those pieces you have out there.
And I agree with that. But for example, if we flip-flop these players, you put Shea on the Knicks and you put Jalen Brunson on OKC, who is the better team and why? Because I'm looking at it because we're talking about just value. We're just talking about value. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, that's easy." It's going to be the Knicks because they have Shea and they just added him to a collection of guys that are already just came off a championship.
Yeah, but those other guys play well with Shea's play style.
That's the thing, though. I think that when you take, let's just remove them all together. I think when you take Brunson out of that lineup, is it a championship lineup? Absolutely not. Can they still win games? Yeah, absolutely. Because if you sub in a player that maybe is averaging maybe 10 points a game, let's say it's not Brunson who's averaging 25 plus. Let's say it's just a guy that's averaging 10, 11 points. They're still a pretty good team because they still have they have one of the best starting lineups in the league. That is something that is true. That doesn't diminish Brunson's greatness because we know what Brunson is and we know what he's been the past couple of seasons or pretty much his entire tenure in New York. He's been the guy. But I think that when you're looking at it, you're putting him in odds of the fact that he's going up against guys like Shea, Wemby, Jokic, Luka. Even if you feel like Luka doesn't play winning basketball, Luka's still going to be in that upper echelon as far as MVP vote. You looking at even if you want to talk about, depending on if Jalen Brown or Jason Tatum, either one comes back into the fold, those are another two sets of players. Then you're talking about guys that maybe are like a Donovan Mitchell, a Cade Cunningham. He's going to be lower on that list because of the fact that those guys have to perform every single night. And that's not saying Jalen Brunson doesn't have to, but his team is really good. And they, you know what I'm saying, they develop into that. But his team is good to the point because if you take Cade out of that Detroit Pistons lineup, I don't know if they even make the playoffs. They may, but it's just the fact that he is so important to what they do. Because when he was out of that, when Cade was out with that collapsed lung, you saw that Detroit looked beatable. They looked very beatable. And they eventually looked beatable anyways, but I'm saying they did not look like the same team. So you take Jokic off of the Denver Nuggets lineup. They are definitely beatable.
You sure about that? Hold on. Are you sure about that, though, if you got a healthy Peyton Watson inserted in there?
Oh, yeah, I'm still, yeah. If you're telling me would I take the Nuggets versus a lot of teams in the 7-game series without Jokic because of what he does for that team, yeah. And I like Peyton Watson. I think he's a great player, but I just think that with Jokic being the guy he is, that just like when we saw the insertion of Wemby makes that team completely different. And I think it's just because of their presence alone. Even if they're not having a great game, scoring wise, the things that they can do outside of that make up for it. So that's why I think about it, because when you look at Brunson, if he's not shooting the ball well, can he play make and still do the same things? I think he can, but he doesn't have to do it to the volume that those other guys have to.
So there's one superstar's name that did not come out of your mouth that I was waiting on, and I think it's actually more comparable to Brunson and his situation when we put this guy in his situation there. That would be Anthony Edwards. If you take Anthony Edwards out of that situation in Minnesota, they've done a great job building a great overall roster around. And when those guys show up to play, they're still a very hard team to beat as well.
Yeah, and I didn't look at it like, see, the thing is, Brunson's put himself into a lot of different conversations. And for me, he's lapped a couple of those guys that I mentioned on that list. He's lapped certain guys, and if you want me to, I'll get into that conversation because, like I said, I've seen guys argue about him being in top 5. Do I think he's in the top 5? No, he's definitely top 10, but I don't think he's in that top 5 as yet because of the fact that it's still a few guys that I still would say, when healthy, I would take over Brunson. And there's not nothing to do with Brunson. I think that these guys are just, when healthy, I think they're better.
So what are your components that qualify that top 5?
I think it's for me, it's not only just the fact that I've seen them do it for, a sustained period of time, but also I've seen them do it on big stages as well. These guys are champions, by the way. The ones I'm putting in the top 5, they've all been champions. They've all been Finals MVPs. They've all had, you know, they've all had stretches of sustained greatness, except maybe one that hasn't actually. One of them hasn't had. He doesn't have a Finals MVP, but he was, by a lot of people's standard, he may be viewed as the best player on that team.
Okay, I need to hear who this top 5 list is now.
Okay, so we can go ahead and you say, and I told you this is when healthy, so keep that in mind. When healthy, I'm putting, of course, Shea, of course, Jokic. Let's get the 2 easy ones out the way. If we want to say when healthy, I will say Giannis as well, because I will take Giannis over him.
Okay, I agree with all that.
Then when we talk about getting into the 4 to 5, if I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm taking Jason Tatum too. I'm taking Jason Tatum. I am. I will take Jason Tatum over him. And I think that it's because of the fact that we can go and play like prisoner of the moment, like we just talked about, and what he was this playoff series because of the fact that he was coming off of a Achilles injury. But if you remember what he was doing to them in that game before he had tore his Achilles, what he was doing in the moments leading up until that time, he was giving them buckets. I even say if you're talking about when they're healthy, and this is kind of a hard one because of the fact that he's almost never healthy. Kawhi Leonard, I feel like. Kawhi Leonard, yeah.
That's an interesting top 5.
Yeah. No. I should have stopped and said this is not after the top 3. I'm not necessarily going off of the top 5 anymore. I should have stopped and said that. I'm just talking about if you're talking about guys who I would take over him right now. Yeah.
Okay. So here's one component that has to be included in it from me, and that's leadership. And that's why I do have Brunson in the top 5, because right now I don't think there's a better leader in the NBA than Jalen Brunson.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. As far as leadership, yeah. It's only a few guys I could put in the same category as him. And you talking about he entered into that LeBron, Steph type of category as guys that can galvanize the troops. And, I didn't even mention in the top 5, I didn't even mention like Wemby. I didn't mention guys like that because
you didn't mention Wemby, you didn't mention Ant, you didn't mention Luka. I'm gonna say
this. For me, he's over Ant right now. For me, yeah. And the reason why I say
Jalen Brunson,
yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah, he's over Ant, and it's not necessarily. I think right now they need more. Ant needs more help. And because of the whole, and when I look at the top 5, it's like when I'm thinking about if you're drafting these players, would you pick this player over this player? So when I'm looking at it, if I'm having to start a franchise, these players I would pick over Brunson, just going off of just like I test what I've seen. Not leadership, because his leadership is unquestioned. I think that when they say the captain, he is the captain. And if I say if he's outside of the top 5, he's not outside of the top 5 and he's at 10. No, he's like barely outside. He's like at 6. You could say either 6 or 7, but no more than that. Like, I think that if you go outside of that, then you're pushing it. And when I say Kawhi Leonard, I'm not saying like, because Kawhi Leonard, he's never healthy pretty much. So I'm going off of just if I'm drafting from a GM standpoint, I feel like that I could get more with Kawhi Leonard than Jalen Brunson, because Kawhi Leonard at his peak, we know what he was. As far as efficiency goes, as far as defensive prowess, yes. Now, we look at it like Wemby, I already know what Wemby is and what he is going to be, but I think that you can start a franchise, and I feel like that the pieces are with Jalen Brunson. We look at the offensive standpoint, but we also have to look at defense too. Now, I know he's good for drawing charges and stuff, but that all goes into the components of where do I put him in the top 5, because he still is a liability on defense in a sense.
Am I looking for a guy who plays good situational defense, or am I looking for a guy who's going to play 94 feet? Because if I'm looking for a guy who plays 94 feet and I'm including defense as a part of it, some of those people in your top five don't qualify in that conversation.
I know you're talking about as far as like playing 94 feet, guarding the guy like from the back court to the front court. Yeah, Jokic, Wemby, none of those guys. Now I feel like Shea is a pretty good defender in his right. I think that he's pretty good on ball.
When he wants to be.
Yeah, when he wants to be. I think now if we're talking about Jalen Brunson, I think he's right outside the top 5 at the 6. I think that he passed up guys like Donovan Mitchell. He passed up guys like I thought he was already ahead of Cade. I already thought he was ahead of Donovan Mitchell. But if it was ever a question, I think he passed. He's already passed those conversations.
No question about it.
I would even put him, to be honest. I would put him in front of Luka too. I would, because I just feel like when you're talking about a dog late in the game, if I had to put the ball in somebody's hand, I'm feeling more comfortable with it being in his hands.
I watched Luka in a final be in a close battle and melt down. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
that's why when people are like, even I've heard like the conversations about, I can't believe people are putting Brunson over Kyrie, and I said, I can't believe it either, because I thought that was never a conversation in the first place. I was like, I didn't even know we were having that conversation. I thought that was always a thing.
See, those are people who are looking at talent and skill set, but not looking at everything else that comes to the table, like leadership and having to actually carry a team at times for most of our. And offensively, yes, Kyrie can carry a team, but I never saw those Celtics teams with Kyrie actually truly galvanized. Never saw those Brooklyn teams with Kyrie, and he wasn't the best player on that team. I don't know who the leader on that Brooklyn team was with him and KD, to be quite honest with you.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at it because the more interesting thing is, where do you rank him amongst point guards? Because right now I feel like coming off a championship, he's no more than 2.
Yes, I agree. The only other point guard that should be in front of him right now should be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people are going to say Steph. I'm like, not right now. And I'm going off. I have to go off what you just did, because even if he didn't win the championship this year, he still would be no lower than 2 for me. And to be honest with you, let's say they go back and do it again next year, he could lap Shai. And I'm talking about just because of the fact that, yeah, we can look at Shai like, yeah, he has all the individual accolades. He has he's a 2-time MVP. He, has the Western Conference MVP, the Finals MVP, and all that. But the thing is, though, what is all that leading to? Because if Brunson can get his team back there and do it again, we already talked about how people were, crowning Shai before if he did this back-to-back. If he went on a run where he won back-to-back MVPs, back-to-back Finals MVPs, people were going to put him in conversations that, he was going to be top 15. I even heard top 15. I heard top 15, top 20. That was conversations I heard if he had did it all again and dominated like he did.
And they would have been viable too.
Yeah. So if I'm looking at Brunson's not going to be the guy that's going to win multiple MVPs. I don't think it's too stacked competition. And for what he has to do, I don't think that he has to do the things that some of those other guys are doing, which is more of a credit to him because of the fact that he has a great team around him. He shouldn't be penalized for the fact that he has a great team. I just think that when it comes down to it, he's not going to be one of those guys that's going to get a bunch of accolades. When it comes down to it, he's going to get a bunch of team accolades, but individual accolades, like he'll get the all NBAs, but I think that's where it ends. Like he'll get all NBAs, clutch player of the year, stuff like that. But he's not going to get the MVPs and stuff that he might deserve because of the fact that those other guys, their usage and what they mean for their team are so substantial because of what they have to do.
And the all NBAs that you're talking about are mostly second team. He's not going to be first team. Yeah. Even though I do have to question him winning this title and what it means to New York, what it means to the NBA. Does it build popularity amongst the media that's doing all of this voting?
I think so, because we know how much national media loves New York. We know that. And I think that it does play a part into it. Even because, like, I think about it like this, it is a shame that he won't win like a first team All NBA because of the fact that there's a Shea, there's a Luka, you know what I'm saying? Guys like that. And I think that I really don't care about position when it comes to the All NBA teams. I don't care about position because we already pretty much made it positionless basketball, anyways. I just think who are the 5 best players in the NBA, and if you are one of the 5 best players in the NBA that year, yeah, you deserve to get the first team, regardless of position. I don't care about that because if we're going off of what he accomplished this year, yeah, Jalen Brunson, he's gonna be like in those conversations. And the thing is, like, he lapped a lot of people. He lapped a lot of people, and I think that is even crazy because, like I said, I know some people are gonna put Steph in those conversations still. I think Steph, while I think that Steph is still in the top 10, I don't think he's a top 5 player. I don't think that. I think that Brunson at this moment, yeah, he's better. He's the second best point guard in the league.
Not only did he lap a lot of people, but this Knicks team as a whole, I feel like when it comes to this year's run in particular, we're going to put it up there with teams like the 2011 Dallas Mavericks that I didn't see this coming, but look at the hurdles that they had to overcome. And it's like, you don't invalidate anybody else's rings, but all rings are not equal. This is one of those heavyweight rings when you really thinking about it. When you think about the guy leading them, the fact that the narrative is that small guys don't lead teams to championships. I'm not saying it's better than that 2011 Mavs ring because Dirk had to overcome a lot during that playoff run alone. I don't think people understand. Like an interesting Portland team in the first round with Brandon Roy on his last legs, sweeping Kobe and the Lakers out of the second round after they were coming off of back-to-back championships. A young OKC team making their first Western Conference Finals run, and then Miami and the Big Three in their first year together and beating them in 6 games. But because it's Jalen Brunson, because he's a small guard, and he just did this, it's pretty up there.
Yeah. I think that what a lot of people were giving his run to the finals a lot of flack because of the fact that he beat a team in the Atlanta Hawks who had a young superstar in Jalen Johnson who did not particularly play well. Then you go play a team in Philadelphia who honestly a lot of people say they were only there because of the fact Jason Tatum didn't play in Game 7 in the first round against Boston. So they were there. They swept them, got them up out of there. Then they got Cleveland up out of there. I think that they were so dominant that people were making it seem like that they had a cupcake walk. And I don't think that. Now, I think that the Spurs, on the other hand, they had a much tougher road, but we always know that all roads don't matter as long as when you get there, what do you do when you get there? Because they showed that y'all went through the tougher road, but we were the better team overall. Because I told you, it's been a while since I've seen a team get walked down in every single game. Even the one game that the Spurs won, they got walked down in every single game. I haven't seen a team get done like that in a long time. Like, that's how crazy that was. That's when you know a team is just better than you. Like, double-digit leads in every game of the series, and you got literally walked down in every single one. I got nothing. That's why I say, like, yeah, the road might have not been as hard as yours, but we definitely did to you what very few teams in the West could even do.
And to the people who are going to have something to say about feeling like this was a bit of a cakewalk for the Knicks because of who some of their opponents were, they don't have control over who they play. They go out there and they play the games.
I look at it like this. It's no different than when LeBron got to the finals. And while his path to the finals wasn't that significant, when he got there, what did he do? Came back from 3-1. The most historic comeback ever. So it doesn't necessarily matter. When we talk about that, it all doesn't matter unless you lose. Because if you lose, then we could honestly have those conversations about, yeah, you had a cupcake walk to the finals. That's fine. But if you come out and you dominate the finals like they just did, I don't care about your walk to the finals. Like if you had to beat these scrub teams because they weren't scrubs while they were in the regular season. They were winning games. They were winning to get to the position they were. So I don't want to hear about it because a lot of people were picking them to lose or get upset in the first round. It was a lot of people out there that said this is the upset watch of the first round in the East. A lot of people were picking that as the matchup because they were saying how dangerous the Hawks were towards the end of the season coming into that first round series. And then you go into a Philadelphia series when we had talked about it. On paper, Philadelphia matched up well with them. On paper.
Yeah, there were people thinking that Philly was going to take this team 7.
Yeah, I think that me and you were just more of the fact on paper they looked like they could match up well. But then when they got to Cleveland, I was like, yeah, nah. By the time it was funny, but they match up. The Eastern Conference Finals matchup to me was the easiest matchup out of those 3. I would have said that was the easiest matchup because I just didn't feel like that Cleveland matched up well with them at all.
Yep, I would have to agree with that 100%. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. We thank everybody for tuning in. We'll be back with another one next week talking more about the upcoming NBA draft and other big things going on in the sports world. But for KB, I'm X, and we're saying peace.
Peace.